There is a prison built not of stone but of sight, a cage where the bars are made of clarity, and you are its only inmate. You watch the world through them, seeing the strings that move the puppets, while they see only the dance. This is the first danger of a mind that sees what others don't. It is the danger they want you to believe is the only one that exists. We begin with a story you have been told 1,000 times, a seductive and tragic myth. It is the tale of the lonely genius, the burden of the seer. You recognize its verses. It is the feeling of sitting in a room full of people you love, yet feeling utterly alone because your mind is operating on a plane they cannot perceive. You see the inevitable conclusion of a flawed business plan 5 steps before your colleagues have even finished debating the first. You hear the unspoken resentment in a friend's compliment. You see the subtle fractures in a relationship that everyone else calls perfect. And in this seeing you find not power, but isolation. This is the conventional weakness, the path of the untaught mind. On this path, clarity is a weight. Each new insight, each pattern recognized, is another stone added to the burden on your back. You become consumed by a quiet disillusionment. The beautiful spectacle of human interaction, which once seemed so genuine, is revealed to you as a cynical theater of ego, fear, and desire. The altruist's hidden need for validation, the leader's deep-seated insecurity, the lover's subtle performance of affection. You see it all. And the world loses its magic, replaced by a cold, predictable machinery. The untrained mind reacts to this vision with emotion. First comes frustration. Why can they not see what is so obvious? You try to explain, to warn, to illuminate, but your words are met with blank stares, with polite dismissal, or worse, with hostility. The bearer of inconvenient truths is never welcome at the feast of comfortable illusions. You are labeled difficult, negative, a pessimist. The system, whether it is your family, your workplace, or your social circle, does not thank the one who points out the rot in the foundations. It seeks to silence them. And so, you learn to retreat into silence, but it is a bitter, resentful silence. It is the silence of the defeated. You become a target, not for your vision, but for your clumsy attempts to share it. Your superiority of mind leads directly to an inferiority of position. The final stage of this weakness is the fantasy that ignorance is a blessing. You begin to envy the blissful masses, those who can enjoy the puppet show without ever seeing the strings. You might even try to sever your own sight, to dull your perception, to join the comfortable darkness. This entire narrative of isolation, of being a target, of disillusionment, is the most insidious trap of all. It convinces you that your greatest potential weapon is, in fact, a self-inflicted wound. It makes a strategic failure feel like a noble sacrifice. It is a prison you have been taught to build for yourself. But the great masters of strategy, the students of Sun Tzu, know a different path. They look upon this romantic tragedy of the misunderstood genius and see only weakness, an appalling waste of a supreme advantage. The strategist does not view clarity as a burden. He recognizes it as the ultimate terrain upon which victory is decided. The danger is not what you see, the danger is what you do with what you see. The danger is the undisciplined reaction. Sun Tzu teaches that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. But who is the first enemy you must subdue? It is yourself. It is the pride that demands you show how clever you are. It is the impatience that yearns to rush ahead. It is the frustration that clouds your judgment. The first victory must be won in the silent battlefield of your own mind. The strategist understands that a mind that sees what others do not is not a megaphone to shout warnings from the rooftops. It is a listening post, buried deep behind enemy lines, silent and invisible. Your first action upon seeing the truth is not to speak, but to deepen your observation. Your silence is not the bitter silence of the defeated. It is the focused, potent silence of the predator. While others are loud, you are still. While they are emotional, you are detached. While they reveal their every thought and intention, you become a void, formless, mysterious, and unreadable. You let them talk. You let them make their predictable moves. You let them draw their flawed maps of reality. And you watch, you gather information. Your unique perception allows you to see not just their actions, but the fears and desires that fuel those actions. This is the beginning of true power. It is not about being understood by the masses. It is about understanding them so completely that their every move becomes a chapter in a book you have already read. The strategist reframes the situation entirely. Isolation is not a curse. It is a state of deliberate separation that grants you objectivity. Disillusionment is not the loss of magic. It is the acquisition of clarity, the shedding of a veil that kept you blind. And the burden of knowledge is not a weight to be carried. It is the high ground from which you can observe the entire battlefield while remaining unseen. Sun Tzu taught, "He who knows when he can fight and when he cannot will be victorious." The mind that sees grants you this knowledge. It tells you that the moment you feel the emotional urge to speak, to prove a point, to lament your own insight, that is the moment you cannot fight. That is the moment to reinforce your silence and discipline. This is the first step on the path of the strategist, transforming a perceived curse into a hidden, formidable weapon. For the mind that sees is not a curse, but a weapon. The danger is in pointing it at yourself. Comment "Discipline is power" to claim dominion over your vision. And subscribe for the coming lessons in the art of invisible warfare. You have turned away from the comforting prison of the misunderstood. You have accepted that the weight of your perception is not a fate to be endured, but a raw element to be forged. Now you stand at the threshold of the real war, the invisible conflict waged not against others, but against the fatal impulses that your own superior mind creates. These are not mere mistakes. They are the three great strategic diseases that afflict the insightful, turning their gift into a liability. They are the enemies within the gates. The first, and perhaps most seductive of these, is the peril of impatience. This is the curse of clairvoyance. Because you see the destination so clearly, the journey becomes an exercise in agony. You watch others deliberate over paths you know lead to ruin. You witness them celebrate minor victories on a road that leads to a cliff. A fire begins to burn within you, a righteous, logical, and utterly self-destructive fire. Your mind, 5 steps ahead, screams for action. This impulse to accelerate the timeline, to force the outcome you have already foreseen, is a catastrophic strategic blunder. Sun Tzu advises that a great general does not command the river to flow faster. He understands its currents, anticipates its floods, and channels its power when the time is right. Impatience is an act of ego. It is a declaration that your timetable is more important than the unfolding of reality itself. When you act upon this fever, you reveal everything. You push your allies, and they begin to see you not as a leader, but as a tyrant. You dismiss their concerns, and they begin to see you not as wise, but as arrogant. You try to force their hand, and you create a resistance that was never there to begin with. The very people you need to execute your vision become obstacles to it, their heels dug in against the sheer force of your will. The true strategist cultivates an almost inhuman patience. He understands that people must walk the path themselves to truly accept it. So he does not shout the destination from the mountaintop. Instead, he subtly removes the debris from the correct path. He places a lantern at a difficult turn. He allows others to discover the way, believing it to be their own insight. He guides them with whispers and nudges, not with shoves and decrees. He knows that a victory won through coercion is temporary, planting the seeds of future rebellion. A victory achieved through subtle guidance is permanent and self-sustaining. The master gardener does not pull on a young sprout to hasten its growth, for he knows this will only tear its roots. He simply tends to the soil, ensures the sun and water are present, and allows nature to take its inexorable course. Your vision shows you the season of the harvest. Your discipline is what allows you to wait for it. The second and most vital principle of this invisible war concerns the betrayal of silence. If impatience is a fever, the urge to reveal your position is a poison you willingly drink, believing it to be medicine. All warfare, as the master teaches, is based on deception. Your unique perception, your ability to see the flaw in the fortress wall that everyone else overlooks, is your single greatest strategic advantage. It is the element of surprise, the hidden dagger, the secret path. And the human mind, in its vanity, is desperate to surrender this advantage for the fleeting prize of recognition. You see the opportunity, you see the threat. The impulse is immediate and overwhelming, to speak, to warn your companions, to demonstrate your intelligence in a meeting, to prove how much you see. The moment a single word of your unique insight leaves your lips, you have lost the war before the first battle has even begun. You have disarmed yourself and armed your opponent in the same breath. Consider this. When you announce the weakness you have found, you do not just alert your allies, you alert your adversaries. You teach them to see what they were blind to. The unguarded flank is now reinforced. The flaw in the argument is now patched over. The opportunity vanishes, not because it was acted upon, but because it was spoken of. You have become the scout who finds the enemy's hidden camp and then lights a bonfire to signal his discovery. You have traded a decisive victory for a moment of applause. The discipline of strategic silence is perhaps the most difficult to master. It requires you to sit with the truth, to hold the winning card in your hand and not show it. It requires you to watch others make mistakes, knowing you could correct them with a sentence, but choosing to wait for the moment when your intervention will not just fix a problem, but reshape the entire board in your favor. The amateur wants to be known as clever. The master is content to be underestimated until the final decisive move. He lets his actions speak, and they speak with the force of an earthquake, a sudden, shocking realignment of reality that leaves onlookers stunned, wondering how it happened. It happened in the long stretches of silence, in the disciplined quiet where the plan was forged, and the advantage was protected with absolute secrecy. Finally, there is the third great peril, the abyss of disconnection. A mind that operates on a higher plane of logic and pattern recognition is always at risk of floating away from the messy, emotional, irrational ground of human reality. You may devise a brilliant strategy, a mathematically perfect plan for success, but a plan that does not account for the terrain upon which it will be executed is nothing more than a fantasy. And the most important terrain of any conflict is the human heart. Sun Tzu's command to know your enemy is not merely about understanding their troop numbers and supply lines. It is about understanding their psychology. The strategist who becomes so enamored with the elegance of his own vision that he forgets the fears, ambitions, pride, and follies of those he must lead or oppose is a general planning a campaign on a fictional map. He is in an ivory tower, disconnected from the world he seeks to influence. This disconnection leads to brilliant plans that fail in practice. You expect people to act as rational agents, but they act out of loyalty, spite, or fear. Your logic is impeccable, but it fails to inspire. Your path is the most efficient, but it fails to account for the team's exhaustion or their need for a sense of purpose. The master strategist understands that empathy is not a weakness. It is the ultimate intelligence-gathering tool. To truly understand the terrain, you must descend from your tower. You must listen to the whispers in the barracks. You must understand what motivates the pawn as much as you understand the king. Knowing an opponent's pride tells you what bait he will always take. Knowing your team's fear tells you where your line is most likely to break. This is not about being sentimental. It is about being effective. The mind that sees what others don't must also develop the capacity to feel what others feel. Not to be swayed by it, but to factor it into the grand equation. Without this connection to the ground, your superior vision will only show you your own downfall in exquisite, painful detail. These three perils, impatience, revelation, and disconnection, are the guardians at the gate of true mastery. To defeat them is to turn your mind from a liability into an instrument of profound and silent power. You have now identified the three great internal adversaries, impatience, revelation, and disconnection. You have seen how a mind of extraordinary perception can become its own saboteur. To know these enemies is the first step, but the path to mastery lies in their utter subjugation. This is the war for the true seat of power, the battlefield of your own soul. For the first and most critical victory a strategist will ever win is the one over himself. Every external triumph is born from this internal conquest. Think of your mind as the command tent and your emotions as your senior officers. If they are in a state of panic, pride, or rebellion, what hope is there for the army? The emotion of frustration is a treacherous advisor, urging a premature charge. The vanity of pride is a spy, whispering your best-laid plans to anyone who will listen. The chill of fear is a defeatist, counseling retreat before the first arrow has flown. The strategist does not destroy these emotions. That is impossible. He tames them. He places them in his counsel, listens to their counsel, and then makes his decision from a place of absolute, unshakable calm. This is the cultivation of equanimity. This internal dominion is a discipline, forged in the fires of daily interaction. It is the practice of absorbing an insult without flinching, not because you are weak, but because the emotional reaction it is designed to provoke would be a tactical error. It is the ability to witness a foolish decision unfold without the need to interject, understanding that the resulting chaos may create a far greater opportunity than a minor correction ever could. It is the strength to hold your tongue when you are praised, knowing that praise can be a more dangerous poison than criticism, for it inflates the ego and dulls the sharp edge of vigilance. The master of this internal state becomes a mirror. When faced with anger, he reflects nothing but tranquility, causing the aggressor's fury to exhaust itself against a placid surface. When faced with chaos, he remains a point of stillness, a lighthouse in the storm that allows him to see the currents and rocks that others, tossed by the waves, cannot. This internal peace is not passive. It is an active, humming state of supreme awareness. From this centered place, you are no longer reacting to the world. You are in a position to act upon it. The average person is a slave to their impulses, a puppet dancing on the strings of their own emotional responses. By conquering yourself, you cut those strings. You become the first and only truly free agent on the battlefield. Once this internal citadel is secured, you can begin to shape the world's perception of you. This is not a matter of public relations or crafting a personal brand. It is a far more subtle and potent art of psychological warfare. The goal is not to be liked or even to be respected in the conventional sense. The goal is to become strategically unreadable, to project a carefully calibrated image that serves your long-term objectives. Here, you must embrace one of Sun Tzu's most profound teachings. Appear weak when you are strong, and strong when you are weak. This principle is the cornerstone of manipulating perception. To appear weak when you are strong is the ultimate act of strategic camouflage. You possess the superior insight. You hold the decisive information. You have formulated the winning plan. The foolish impulse is to display this strength, to intimidate rivals, to claim the status of the alpha. The strategist does the opposite. He adopts a posture of humility. He asks simple questions to which he already knows the complex answers. He allows others to underestimate him, to dismiss him as a minor player, to speak freely in his presence under the assumption that he lacks the wit to understand the implications of their words. This cultivated weakness is a vacuum into which your opponents pour their arrogance and their secrets. By seeming harmless, you are granted access to everything. No one guards their tongue around the person they do not consider a threat. No one prepares a defense against the army they do not believe exists. You are allowed to move through the corridors of power, a quiet shadow, gathering intelligence, observing dynamics, and positioning your pieces on the board without anyone even realizing a game is being played. Conversely, the art of appearing strong when you are weak is a tool for deterrence and survival. In moments of vulnerability, when your resources are thin or your position is compromised, a projection of unwavering confidence can be your greatest shield. It is a calculated bluff. A calm demeanor, a steady gaze, a refusal to be rushed. These signals can make an adversary pause, to second-guess their intelligence, to imagine you have a hidden reserve of strength they have failed to account for. This hesitation is often all the time you need to recover your true strength. The ultimate mastery of this principle, however, is to transcend both strength and weakness and become what Sun Tzu calls formless. When your opponents look at you, they should see nothing definite. Your motivations are unclear. Your capabilities are unknown. Your next move is impossible to predict. You are a mist, a void. This formlessness is profoundly unsettling to the human mind, which craves certainty and labels. Unable to categorize you, they project their own anxieties onto you, making you a far more fearsome entity in their imagination than you could ever be in reality. Every one of these controlled actions Every moment of deliberate silence, every carefully chosen projection of weakness or strength is a stone being laid. You're not merely acting in the moment. You are building a monument. You are constructing your reputation. This reputation is your most powerful passive weapon. It is a shadow that stretches far ahead of you, entering a room long before you do, conditioning the minds of others before you have spoken a single word. It is the sum of their observations of your uncanny patience, your unnerving calm, your history of succeeding in ways they cannot quite decipher. This reputation is not one of a bombastic genius. That is a loud, fragile thing. The reputation you build is one of quiet depth, of inscrutable intent. It creates an aura of consequence around you. People begin to weigh their words more carefully in your presence. They start to consider that any overt move against you might be a step into a trap they cannot see. Your stillness becomes more menacing than another's shout. Your silence becomes more significant than another's speech. This is the culmination of mastering the psychological battlefield. You begin to shape outcomes without direct action. Your influence is gravitational. The behavior of those around you subtly shifts to accommodate their perception of your hidden power. They steer clear of conflict with you, not out of fear of an open clash, but out of a deeper, more primal apprehension of the unknown. They do not know how you would retaliate, and their imagination does a far better job of deterring them than any open threat ever could. You have created a throne of quiet authority, one that no one dares approach because it is built not on force, but on the unassailable power of a mind that has first and completely mastered itself. You have learned to see, to remain silent, and to conquer yourself. Now, before we unveil how this vision is transmuted into final victory, ensure you are subscribed, for the ultimate wisdom is reserved for the true strategist. You have journeyed inward, quelled the rebellions of emotion and ego, and forged a reputation from the ether of stillness and inscrutability. You have cultivated your garden in patient silence, but a garden is cultivated for its harvest. A weapon is forged to be used. The moment will arrive when observation must give way to action. This is the culmination of all your discipline, the execution of the decisive strike. According to Sun Tzu, this moment is not the chaotic, brutal melee that the amateur envisions as war. It is not an emotional confrontation or a drawn-out struggle. It is akin to the bursting of a dam that has held back a tremendous weight of water. The breach itself is small, almost insignificant, but the force it unleashes is unstoppable and total. The true strategist's attack is precisely this: a minimal effort, applied at the perfect point of maximum leverage, that triggers a cascade of inevitable consequences. This moment is not chosen, it is recognized. Your long period of quiet observation was not passive. You were mapping the terrain, studying the currents, and identifying the hairline fractures in your adversary's structure. Because your mind sees what others don't, you perceived the critical vulnerability, the linchpin holding their entire enterprise together. It is rarely the most obvious or fortified point. More often, it is an overlooked assumption, an overconfident deputy, a dependency on a single fragile process. While they were busy reinforcing their walls, you were studying their foundations. The timing of the strike is governed by a principle the master called shi, or strategic momentum. It is the feeling of ripeness, the moment when the situation is pregnant with possibility. It is when your opponent has overextended, grown complacent from a string of minor successes, or become distracted by an internal conflict. At that precise juncture, when their attention is elsewhere and their defenses are psychologically lowered, you act. The quality of the decision, Sun Tzu wrote, is like the well-timed swoop of a falcon which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. The act itself is swift, precise, and often breathtakingly simple. To the outside observer, it may even appear to be a stroke of luck, a fortunate coincidence. They do not see the months or years of silent, disciplined preparation that made the moment possible. It might be a single, well-placed question in a pivotal meeting that exposes a fatal flaw in a plan. It could be the quiet promotion of a competent individual whose loyalty you have already ascertained, placing them in a key position. It might be the deliberate inaction, allowing an arrogant rival to walk confidently into a trap of their own making. The strike is not about destruction. It is about initiating a rapid and irreversible shift in the balance of power. You do not smash the enemy's army. You cut off its supply line and the army dissolves on its own. You do not argue with a flawed ideology. You expose its core contradiction and it collapses under its own weight. It is an act of supreme efficiency, achieving the greatest possible result with the least expenditure of energy. There is no anger in it. There is no malice. There is only the cold, beautiful logic of a perfectly executed maneuver. Following this decisive action, the true test of the master begins. This is the aftermath, the consolidation phase. The amateur celebrates his victory. He gloats, he boasts, he distributes the spoils. In doing so, he plants the seeds of his next conflict, creating resentment and enemies among the vanquished. The strategist, however, does not celebrate. He simply observes. His work is not the strike itself, but the new reality the strike has created. His focus immediately shifts to stabilizing the new landscape on his terms. The goal was never merely to win a single battle. It was to achieve a lasting and advantageous peace. This peace is not an absence of conflict. It is a reordering of the environment where future challenges to your position become unthinkable. Your reputation, forged in silence and confirmed by a single, devastatingly effective action, now does most of the work for you. You have demonstrated a capacity for foresight and execution that is beyond the comprehension of your rivals. They did not see the blow coming, and now that it has landed, they cannot fully trace how it was achieved. This creates a powerful mystique. They will hesitate to challenge you in the future, not because they are certain to lose, but because they are uncertain of the very rules of the game you are playing. You do not rule through fear in the way a tyrant does, by making overt threats. You establish dominion through awe, by fostering an environment of profound uncertainty about your capabilities. This is the throne no one dares approach. It is a peace, secured not by walls and armies, but by the psychological ascendancy you have established. You have shaped reality to such a degree that open conflict against you becomes illogical, an act of self-destruction. Future opponents will defeat themselves in their own minds long before they ever contemplate taking the field. This is the ultimate expression of power, the ability to achieve one's will without struggle, to win wars that are never fought. So we arrive at the final philosophical conclusion. The warning from Sun Tzu, the danger of a mind that sees what others don't, was never about the pain of loneliness or the burden of knowledge. That was merely the gatekeeper's riddle, designed to turn back the undisciplined. The true danger was always the temptation to misuse the gift, to let it curdle into impatience, to squander it for a moment's recognition, to become disconnected from the very world you seek to navigate. To possess such a mind is to carry a unique responsibility, the responsibility to cultivate an even greater level of self-mastery. The ultimate power is not found in seeing the future. It is found in possessing the profound wisdom to remain perfectly still, until the precise moment you can reach out and shape that future with a single, silent, and decisive touch. The greatest victory is not the one announced by trumpets, but the one marked by the quiet dawn of a new order, where your will has become the invisible foundation of the world around you.